Now let's talk about the lowest two layers, the data link layer, layer number 2, and the physical layer, layer number 1. They are important layers as well as the third and the fourth for the network specialists and engineers. The data link layer, layer number 2, it's a reliable layer for the data transfer across the physical link. It is responsible for the reliability on the level of hop-to-hop transfer. Across the physical link means that it is responsible for the reliability of data transfer from the machine to the switch, and from the switch to the router, and from the router to the next router across the LAN domain. It is responsible of physical addressing. Physical addressing is different than logical addressing. The physical address is not bound to geographical location and cannot be changed. The logical address is bound to the geographical location and can be changed according to the geographical location of the machine or of the network interface card inside this machine. But remember that both addresses are unique and cannot be repeated. The data link layer organizes the data into frames. The frame is the data unit at this layer. At the data link layer, at layer 2 we call data frames, at layer 3 we call data packets, and at layer 4 we call data segments, and at layer 1 we will call data bits or bytes. The data link layer puts the frames onto the physical medium, checks for frames errors, and this checking does not include correction. It is just error detection only. It is responsible for hop-to-hop addressing on the range of LAN domain, addressing with the physical address. The physical address is a unique identifier that cannot be repeated. It is not logical, it is not bound to the geographical location. It is only used for hop-to-hop addressing to identify the machine on the LAN domain. The physical address is burned on the network interface card and it cannot be changed. It is vendor oriented. Every specific part of the physical address tells that this network interface card belongs to this vendor, which means network interface card from a certain vendor should have a physical address that is related to this vendor. A very common example of the physical address is the MAC address, the medium access control address. Sometimes the physical address is called the hardware address. The data link layer receives data packages from the network layer when sending and convert this data into frames including the following: the data itself, the data package, the sender and the receiver physical addresses, error checking and control information, a field that helps for error checking for this frame. Checking and control ensures the frame has been delivered without troubles. This is the functionality of such field for error checking and control. If part of the frame is lost during transmission, then the data link layer protocols of the receiver would see that. Data link layer at the receiver request data retransmit from the sender. As you can see, this is just a retransmission request, not a correction action that can correct the data that is corrupted at the frame. It is just a retransmission for the corrupted frame or for the frame that contains wrong information. The switches and the bridges are devices that work in the data link layer, work in both layers, physical and data link. Switch and bridge work in layer 2. The frame check sequence, FCS, is the error checking mechanism that is created at the data link layer. The FCS is a number based on the values of all the preceding fields in the frame. The receiver receives data with the FCS value. The receiver compares the FCS to the data field in the frame to check if this FCS is consistent with the data or not. If in an unlucky scenario of failed comparison, the following is done. If this FCS is saying that the data is not consistent with the field of FCS, the data is assumed to be corrupted, then the receiver requests data resending from the sender. The FCS is also beneficial if the comparison is successful. The receiver sends a message of successful data transmission back to the sender. If the receiver did not receive the success message during specific period of time, automatically the sender resends the data frames. The data link layer is divided into two sublayers, the LLC, which is the logical link control layer, and the MAC layer, the medium access control layer. Another function of data link layer is it controls the flow when many different nodes are sending data at the same time. This is the layer where collision is detected and avoided. This is the layer where the SYSMAS CD and the SYSMAS CA, if you remember, collision, carrier sense multiple access, collision detection, or carrier sense multiple access, collision avoidance take place and are implemented. The data link layer has been divided into two sublayers by the IEEE, which are the logical link control, the LLC, and the medium access control. The LLC is responsible for the hop-to-hop reliability and hop-to-hop flow control. Reliability means that the data must reach each destination with no errors, and the flow control is the synchronization between the speeds of the sender and the speed of the receiver. The MAC layer adds the physical addresses to the frames of the sender and of the receiver. It is responsible of communication with the physical layer. Let's talk about the physical layer. The physical layer transmits bit streams over the physical link. Data at the physical layer are either bits or bytes. It sends data signals to media and receives it. The physical connection that really exists among the 7 layers is between the two physical layers of the sender and of the receiver. Other links that exist between the data link here and there are just logical links. The physical layer adapts to the transmission media. Either it is cables or wireless media. Either it is copper or fiber optic. Either it is coaxial or twisted pair if copper, or single mode or multi-mode if fiber optic. It is responsible for the representation of the ones and zeros, responsible for the digital representation. Is it plus 5 volt or plus 3 volt or plus 0 volt? The voltage and the electrical representation is the responsibility of the physical layer. Devices that work in the physical layer are the NIC, the network interface card, the hub, the repeater. All of these are devices that work in the physical layer only. As we can see, here are two stacks of 7 layers for the sender and for the receiver. We can imagine a logical link between the application layer here and the application layer there. But the physical link that really exists and that is not imaginary inside this diagram is really between the physical link at the sender side and the physical link at the receiver side. It is either through optical fiber or copper wire or electromagnetic waves in the wireless media that transmits a stream of bits and bytes from the physical layer here to the physical layer there to represent the data of zeros and ones being sent from the sender to the receiver. By this we come to the end of the data link layer and physical layer explanation. Thank you.